Hi guys, welcome back to the Promised Land podcast with me, Scott Saunders, talking all things Manchester United. United play Rangers in the Europa League on Thursday, and I will be looking ahead a little bit to that, but talking more about the stuff that is still happening off the pitch at United. You can never get too far away from chaos. We've had reports over Ruben Amorim losing his temper and breaking a TV in the post-match talk to the players against Brighton in that defeat on Sunday. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, talk about the stuff that's happening in the transfer market as well for Manchester United, because it seems like we could get one or two surprise departures. I will say that. Alejandro Garnacho is potentially, it's looking more and more likely every day at the moment that he's going to end up leaving United at some point this month. And I don't think anybody could have really predicted that at the start of 2025. But I'll talk about that in the second half of the show. I'll talk about Ruben Amorim and his little tantrum, which I love, by the way, giving you that. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But I'll also talk some nice words for Harry Maguire as well. He's done the pre-match press conference ahead of the Rangers Europa League game. Ultimate professional, I do have to say. And he carries himself very, very well. So not surprised that he's been put up to do media duties at a difficult time for Manchester United. When is it ever not a difficult time for Manchester United? But yeah, I am doing this show more regularly than I've ever done it before, if you hadn't noticed already. We're going currently at about 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times a week at the moment. And I'm enjoying it, I've got to say. And there's always something to talk about with Manchester United, obviously. And I'm just trying to get a little bit better of talking down the lens and through the microphone to you guys directly who listen and watch. Really appreciate the support. As always, I really do. And I'm working behind the scenes on trying to make this even better in the episodes to come. We're at episode, I believe this is the 291st episode of this show. So approaching a nice milestone in the next couple of weeks. Well, at this rate, that's how it's looking. Approaching another milestone of 300 episodes, and we'll see where we go beyond that. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you are. It would really help if you're telling your friends about it and sharing. I would really, really appreciate that, because I would love more people to listen, because I feel like watching United at the moment, seeing how United are reported on, seeing all the chaos that is happening both on and off the pitch is quite difficult to digest. And what I'm trying to do here is bring a little bit of an alternative take to kind of level out the feeling around the club at the moment, because you're never too far away from disaster by the seams of it. And that is what drives the narrative. Let's just say that. But yeah, I'll be talking about Ruben Amorim today and Alejandro Garnacho. Please subscribe to the podcast, as I just said, the Promised Land and Manchester United podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all of your usual audio platforms. Please subscribe on whichever platform you use. Please rate the show, give it 5 stars, leave a comment as well with a nice review, or a potentially negative review or some nice feedback. Please leave that for me as well. I will try and endeavor to take it on board and improve. I would always love to do that. And please follow the show and subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. This is in video format if you would prefer that. That is on the Promised Land's YouTube channel, the Promised Land and Manchester United podcast. Please like the video. Please leave a comment there as well and subscribe to that channel too. And follow me on social media at _Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And I'm also on Blue Sky. Link is in the description of this episode of the show. Anyway, right. So United I'm just going to dig up the Europa League table. I should really have prepared where United are, because I don't think they're too badly placed at the moment, having won a couple of games. We are looking at it now, digging it up. United are 7th on 12 points going into the last, I believe this is the last 2 games in the next 2 weeks. So United have Rangers, obviously in the next match on Thursday, and then in a week Thursday, I believe they play Steaua Bucharest away from home. And obviously, I think these are crucial matches in a sense, because this new format that's happening in the Champions League and that is happening in the Europa League and the Conference League, it takes a little bit of getting used to. I've got to say myself, but obviously the higher up you finish, if you finish in the top 8, then you go straight through into a last 16 round. Whereas if you finish in the middle 16, so from 9th to 24th, you go into a playoff round against the teams who finish in those positions and in those places. So these games are quite important for United to get right. And as bad as it looks at the moment on the pitch, I've said this recently, but I'll say it again. As it stands, the last time I checked, and this was last week, United are favourites to win the Europa League because there's no Champions League teams dropping into this competition. So, your big competitors here, Lazio, Athletic Bilbao, Galatasaray, Rangers, who play tomorrow, one place below United. Tottenham, perhaps, they're the second favourites, but not going well for them at the moment either. You got Ajax, Roma, Porto, Fenerbahce. And, when you think of it, no matter how bad United are playing, if they can somehow turn a corner, if they can miraculously get a couple of signings over the line this month at left wing back, like we talked about Patrick Dorgu on the last episode or one of the last episodes, it looks like United are going for him. There's talk about Alvaro Carreras as well, who United had in their academy but never gave a chance. And now he's out playing at Benfica, got an assist and looked really good against Barcelona in the Champions League. An absolutely mad game that was, by the way. 5-4 win for Barcelona in Portugal. But he's looking like he's grown a little bit. And United have an 18 million buyback clause, an 18 million euro buyback clause on him, which they could trigger if he wants to come back. So what I'm saying is, if United and Ruben Amorim can start getting things right, it does seem a way off yet, of course. But if they can start getting things right and that turnaround on the pitch does come at some point in the next couple of months, then United have a chance. They really do. And I know United are 13th in the Premier League at the moment, but you win the Europa League, you get in the Champions League. And it's a long way off. But no matter how bad United are playing, they do have enough quality in there, like we've seen in the Liverpool games, like the Arsenal games, that they can hang with good teams and they can get their mindset right when it really, really matters. In those big matches. I don't have too much faith that they will win that competition, obviously, but I'm just saying, don't be surprised if they do go far in this competition. What they have to do first, and Amorim has outlined this, they just have to get over the line and ensure that they finish in those top 8 places and beating Rangers tomorrow, and then we'll see how the games play out tomorrow before knowing what United have to do in their final game. But you beat Rangers at Old Trafford, and chances are you jump right up, or at least consolidate the position in the top 8. And the last thing that United need at the moment is more football matches to happen. So, yeah, if you can avoid that playoff round, a 2-legged playoff round in the last 32, or the playoff round before the last 16 of the Europa League, very, very important to do so. And that is more training time on the pitch for Ruben Amorim and his players. And providing United get some players over the line this month, could be up to 2, maybe, potentially. We'll see what happens. I'm sure it really depends on departures as well. But look, if United can get over the line tomorrow, big ask, I know, because we can't depend on them at the moment, but they are among the favourites to win this competition. So as bad as it looks at the moment, try and take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And if something does turn, Ruben Amorim has spoken about this in his pre-match. He said, look, if we score the first goal against Rangers tomorrow and we build our confidence from there and then go into the next game and go to Fulham on Sunday, difficult game again. But if you go into that game on Sunday with a bit more confidence and you can start building some momentum, and the understanding comes more about how the tactics and the structure and the instructions, if you can build on that, by the end of the season, you might be on an upturn, and that might help you out in knockout football as well. So let's see how it goes. United played Rangers, and Ruben Amorim has, in his pre-match press conference, come out not apologizing, but essentially saying, yeah, I got a little bit too frustrated in my post-match press conference against Brighton where I said that this is the worst Manchester United team in history, or along those lines. He's obviously got a lot of stick for that over the last few days. And obviously, if he said he knew that he was giving the media a line to run with at the time, and goodness me, did they run with the line. There was, is this actually the worst Manchester United team in history? Well, in 1931, they're actually in this position. And technically, they're not the worst team because they got relegated, and it's I think he was just going a little bit over the top to make a point. But obviously, everything you say, every move you make is magnified to the nth degree when you're a Manchester United head coach or a Manchester United manager or a Manchester United player. So that is, I did warn about this actually. I said this after I did a podcast after his first game against Ipswich. And I said, when Ed Sheeran interrupted him and he looked a little bit like fed up of all of the media he was having to do. And he said, look, I don't want to be doing this essentially. It's a lot more attention than I'm used to. I said at the time then he's going to have to be careful with what he says and careful with how he acts because the media could end up turning on him and using his actions against him. And I think over the last few days, he's really had that tide turned. And there's people who are, maybe some of you guys who are listening as well thinks, why is he, this team isn't suited to the system, so change the system. That's not the point here. If he does that, Erik ten Hag did that after 2 matches. United had a good season where he changed the system and they went a little bit more defensive. They got a few 1-0 wins and they finished, 3rd in the Premier League and won the Carabao Cup. But in the end, when he tried to revert back to the style that he wanted to play, it was an absolute mess. So Amorim's taken the decision to come in, stick to his principles and wait it out. And unfortunately, that's just going to have to be the short-term pain that we have to deal with. Watching Manchester United and short-term pleasure, I'm sure, for many people who don't support United, but he has to do that. And look, it's going to mean that there's frustration in him when his players don't listen to his instructions. And he said after the Brighton game the other day, while he was talking about United being the worst team in the world, that the players were moving out of position and doing things off their own accord and not sticking to the plan because they were losing the game. That is a source of frustration for him. And I'm pretty sure he's let people know that that's the case in the dressing room after that Brighton game. What he did do after that Brighton game was give a little bit too much to the media. And he's not apologized for it today, but he has maybe he's a little bit embarrassed and he couldn't promise that he wouldn't show that kind of frustration again. But I do like that about him. I do like that he is emotional. I do like that it shows that he cares and that he shows his frustration, because I think Manchester United at the moment, they are a club that is so lacking in high standards that they need somebody to come in and challenge everybody and make them perform to their maximum. If they're not working, if they're not fitting the system, if they're refusing to follow instructions, then it's put up or shut up time, I think, for a lot of people. And Ruben Amorim's one of the newest people to this structure, so he needs time to bed in his ideas and find players who can take those instructions on and are willing to fight for everything that he says, follow every word that he says, because that's the only way that this is going to work in his eyes. And as much as the club have to plan for the long term and make decisions that mean that they protect the long-term interests of the club beyond Ruben Amorim, if this doesn't work out, they also have to give enough to Ruben Amorim and the system in terms of the players that he wants to be able to see that this system is going to work. And I pointed out in the last stream that I did, it's just about finding players who are physically capable of playing in that system and finding players who are willing to listen to instructions. It doesn't really matter about whether they can play a specific role in a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1 or whatever it is. It's more, obviously you need that, but it's more, can you deal with the physicality and the mentality of having to deal with high level football twice a week, is what I said the other day. So that's important as well. And United need to be able to create or build a squad of players that is able to deal with what Ruben Amorim is asking of them. And you can understand why Ruben Amorim lost his temper. the other day. You can understand it, and I certainly can anyway. I tweeted in response actually to because where are we now? We're on Wednesday as I record this. On Tuesday, obviously, the news broke that Ruben Amorim had really lost his temper with the players in the dressing room before that press conference that he did on Sunday. Now, what he did was break stuff. He damaged the TV. There's suggestions that other stuff got damaged. There's suggestions that some players were quite upset by it or a little bit shocked by it. And there was also there's also been a video going around over the last day or two of Ruben Amorim doing that press conference with a cut on his finger, which I think is maybe evidence that something he's not been happy with something. But we can't confirm, nor you can't confirm that. We don't exactly know what's happened, but I'm sure we can take enough away to understand that Ruben Amorim was not very happy. And for me, this is why I say follow me on X. I put a tweet out after it about him losing his temper, and I made 2 points on it. I'm not surprised, and good. I like to see that emotion, and I'm not surprised. When you're watching a group you're managing consistently not follow instructions, you're probably going to get frustrated. And having managed people for a long time myself, and I'm sure there's many of you out there who have who've managed people. When you manage people and they don't do what you ask, it's frustrating. And what do you want to happen if you manage people and they don't do what you ask? You need to give people autonomy, obviously, but in the confines of a system, on a football pitch, a tactical system, which is not too expressive, is very disciplined in certain positions. You have to do certain things when certain things happen. Then it's going to be frustrating for you. And it's going to be frustrating for somebody who's managing a group of people. And I understand that. And for me, I completely get, especially after seeing some of these awful goals that United are conceding. Onana dropping a clanger again the other day and conceding goals that even Harry Maguire admitted today in his pre-match for Rangers. He admitted that in the goal in the first 5 minutes that Brighton scored, United had worked on that. They'd worked on defending that situation, still conceded within the first 5 minutes because they switched off. How annoying is that? How annoying must that be? Not only for the players, but for the coach as well, who's come in and has probably had the worst run of his career at the biggest club or one of the biggest clubs in the world, with the spotlight on him like he's never had it before. Getting challenged on, does your system actually work? Well, you need to give it a chance. He needs to be backed. Obviously, he needs to get players who are capable of doing it. And this process at the moment that we're going through, as we've outlined from the very beginning, is Ruben Amorim needs to use the rest of the season to work out which players are people that he will take on for longer than the rest of this season in this project. And what I like about him as well is that he doesn't mince his words at all. I think it's really refreshing. He doesn't mince his words. He tells you, as in us who are watching what he's saying in media, he tells the players behind the scenes. He's very, very clear with, this is what I expect of you. And if you're not meeting the standards, you don't have to look at Marcus Rashford. If you're not meeting what I want, you are not playing. And when there's players on the pitch who are not meeting the standards and you don't really have any other option to rotate them out, then you're a little bit stuck. But Amorim, it needs, what this club needs at the moment is somebody like that to hold people accountable. United have been failing for so long as a football club. And the question always is about, a good manager will come in and get the most out of the players that he's got. Yeah, that may be true to a degree, but we're talking about a club here that is culturally broken and has been culturally broken for 11, 12 years. And every year it gets worse and worse. And new players who are brought in are eventually engulfed by the malaise that encapsulates the entire football club. You're not going to fix that in 2 months, 6 months. You're not going to. It's a complete cultural shift from the very top. And some tough decisions have to be made over the course of that, both off the pitch and on it. And I followed up with, I said, if you're not pulling your weight, get out. I'm sick of managers pandering to underperforming playing staff to make them feel nice so they can perform for 2 games. United needs strong leaders in key positions who are willing to say unpopular things and are willing to hold higher standards than have been allowed or have seeped into the club over the past decade or so. It's a malaise that it captures everybody, and it's not until there's a group of people working together that are strong enough to arrest that decline that we'll actually see United being pulled out of it. And I think Ruben Amorim's getting a lot of stick at the moment. I'm seeing that some fans are starting to even lose faith in him already. You just need to have a bit of patience and understand, as much as, you know, United have history to uphold, United are in a completely different situation to where they've ever been in their history, especially over the last generation. So things might have to be operating a little bit differently. The other point I wanted to make about what's happened, or that information that came out around Ruben Amorim losing his temper. One of my big things that I was asking is, how is every single thing that seems to go on behind the scenes at United, why is that public information? Like, what happens in a dressing room? I know that the one example I maybe can think of is, we all know about Sir Alex Ferguson's hairdryer, for example, but there was one time where in an FA Cup game against Arsenal, which United lost at Old Trafford, Alex Ferguson kicked a boot that hit David Beckham in just over the eye and cut his face. And that was obviously national news, plastered all over papers and that kind of thing. And now it's not quite, well, I'm seeing papers recently, but it's, that news spread so far because it's a Manchester United manager and a Manchester United coach losing his temper and losing his mind because he'd seen something which didn't meet his standards. And I'm just thinking, why is that? Why is every single piece of information? It seems like there's 2, 3, 4 things a week at the moment that is put in the narrative that just drives United further down. And yes, of course, the club have made some awful decisions, and they keep making bad decisions. But at the same time, how is all this coming out? Maybe people within the club are frustrated. Obviously, I can understand that because of where United are, but it doesn't do the club any good at all. They need to stop this. And another example of this over the last few days is, it seems like every few weeks there's news of another round of cuts that Ineos are making. And obviously there is massive sympathy that many people, and I have, with people who are affected in these cuts. But the way that I look at this at the moment is like, what the latest development is, Dennis Irwin, the likes of Dennis Irwin, Brian Robson, Gary Pallister, are having their ambassadorial payments reduced from over the next few months. And I'm just thinking, like, we need to think a little bit more critically here. Yes, that is put out. That news is obviously put out because it drives hundreds of thousands of clicks and sells hundreds of thousands of newspapers. It drives a narrative that keeps going on, and every time it's gobbled up by frustrated United fans who are losing faith in the football club. And there's plenty of reason to do that at the moment. But I'm taking a step back and I'm thinking, let's think of this differently. Obviously, you guys know, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I've worked in media for a decade plus, sports media, running websites for a decade plus. Know how this works. And it's all kind of whipped up because Manchester United are the most read about club and most consumed club in the country by a distance, especially when they're bad. It's even worse, or it's even greater because you have the frustrated United fans who are obviously have that feeling of belonging to the football club, and they want to know everything that happens about it, and that's why the sphere around United is so big. But it causes them to lose faith in how the club is operating, and it's very difficult at the moment when you see the club's league position. But also, these news developments also appeal and they drive a narrative for the supporters of every other club in the country who revel in United's failures because of United's success over the last 20 years, or not the last 10 years, but the 20 years before that, who've grown up with that, who've grown up with United being the big boys in town. And I just think there just seems to be like new developments every single time. And I'm just getting a little bit sick of it. Yes, we know that they need to cut costs. We know. But as I've said before, they are willingly becoming the bad guys. Ineos are willingly becoming the bad guys. Why don't we switch how we look at this and think, how has this happened in the first place? How has this happened in the first place? Oh, you all know why it's happened in the first place. The Glazer family ran this football club into the ground by lacking spine, poor financial management, and the unwillingness to make difficult decisions. They spent the club's money, plunged the club with debt. They spent the club's money to the point where now they don't have any left, and they're on the line, and they're having to make difficult decisions around players that they would never sell in another generation. But the way that United have been run into the ground over the last few years, somebody, as I said this just now, I said it about Ruben Amorim, someone has to be the unpopular guy with people. They have to hold standards high. But some measures have to be taken to create the flexibility and the wiggle room to be able to reinvest in the team to move them up forward again. Because they're just so so close to the line at the moment that it's incredibly difficult for them to maneuver around this. Because we all look at the team and we think that this team can't cope with what Amorim's asking them to do, and we all know that. But it's not like they can just drop 200 million quid like they used to do every summer, overpaying for footballers. It's not like that can just happen anymore because those reserves have run dry and they're now running on a credit card. So I'll talk about Alejandro Garnacho in a second, but I just wanted to look, maybe that's not a popular thing to say. I don't know. But the narrative around United at the moment, look, they're 13th in the league, so I completely understand how the focus is on them because they shouldn't be in 13th in the league. But the fact of the matter is, a series of really, really poor decisions have led to United's demise. Death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. Some very big ones. You know, letting Paul Pogba go for free, buying him back for 89 million quid, and then letting him go for free. Having never, ever fostered the atmosphere at the club or had a coach who could get the best out of him. You know, it's decisions like that. It's poor management from the very top is what is ultimately led to all of the problems that United have. And what it does take is somebody to come in and be unpopular to make unpopular decisions. And one of those unpopular decisions, I say unpopular. I think there's a bit of division on this. But I'm tailing on from my previous point about unpopular decisions. And the sale of Alejandro Garnacho it was something that we talked about that was discussed maybe a couple of weeks ago as a potential thing that could happen. But I think that the more that this develops, and there's meant to be talks with, look, Napoli and Chelsea are meant to be the interested parties. And it seems like each day that passes by, a deal is getting more and more close to agreement. It seems like Garnacho himself wants the move. He's spoken to Antonio Conte on the phone last Friday. Conte wants him. They've just sold a player in that position in Kvaratskhelia who's gone to PSG. There's a spot in the team for him. They have money to reinvest. Napoli are interested. They want to make it happen. United have set out their stall and they have a fee that they want. But suggestions are that there could be potentially a coming together or a meet in the middle kind of vibe over the next week or two, next few days even, to strike an agreement over the deal. It doesn't seem like personal terms will be an issue. And I think of you look at Garnacho's situation. I don't think you can really blame him for wanting to go to take a move like this. He's playing for one of the best teams in Italy, the top team in Italy at the moment, under a coach that has won multiple league titles in many countries. I'm trying to think of how many countries. Well, Italy and England. He obviously won it in England as well, Antonio Conte. But you can understand why the appeal is there for Garnacho. Absolutely. Absolutely. You only have to look at Scott McTominay as an example of a player who just last year was much maligned for his lack of ability to fit into the tactical system that the manager wanted. And then, although he contributed, massive fan favorite for many people, I really like him as a player as well. But obviously there was that narrative around him. United ended up in the same position, having to potentially sell an academy graduate because they needed to reinvest that money. And they did, by the way. They need to reinvest that money. And look, Scott McTominay's gone to Naples now and is having one of the best seasons of his career. Scored a goal at the weekend again, and just looks to be enjoying himself in a different atmosphere, in a different country, playing for. He could win a league title this season. And I'm sure Alejandro Garnacho will look at that and look. There was only a few weeks ago or a few months ago where he scored a goal and didn't celebrate it because he was so kind of affected by the negative feedback that he'd had recently, just before it. So you can understand why he's looking to go. I think there's also probably some kind of effect as well around the history of that for Argentinian players. Diego Maradona is absolutely worshipped in that city, and I'm not saying for a 1 millisecond that I'm comparing the two, but this is, imagine like playing for Argentina and knowing the legacy that Maradona has, especially in that city. And you saw Kvaratskhelia go to the big image of Maradona before he left for Paris. He is an absolute god in that city, and going to Argentina and following in the footsteps of that, one of perhaps football's greatest ever player, and one of the greatest players in the history of your country, alongside Leo Messi, obviously, that would be a lot or a big deal for a player like Garnacho. And I think that there's lots in this for Garnacho himself. I'm not surprised at all that the move appeals to him. I'm a little surprised that I think this might happen. I've got to be honest. But just tailing back to the last point I made before that, hard decisions are going to have to be taken to reinvest in this team. And I've seen that there's maybe some concern that, United are so impacted financially that they just need to do this in order to raise money just to stay positive with PSR. And I've seen some comparisons. I think this has happened with many people as well. Comparisons between Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazer family, how they've got in cahoots with each other, and Amorim buying the stake that he did has allowed the Glazers to just stay on as silent partners. That was the only way that they could get that deal done at the time. But you only have to look at the actions that Ratcliffe has been doing behind the scenes in terms of, look, not all the negative stuff, but in terms of the statements that he's making about how he wants Manchester United to be back at the top of European football, back at the top of English football. There's consistent talk, and I think we've had this discussion on the pod. I had it with Rob many times about the stadium. It looks to me like the new stadium is the more likely option over the next few years. 100,000 seats and completely regenerating an entire area around the stadium. Does that not scream ambition to you? You know, you need to kind of take a step back sometimes. It's very difficult when you're a supporter to not be locked up in the emotion of things that are happening. And look, there's some very, very bad it's definitely a bad look. Some of these decisions that are being made, definitely very bad looks. But United are at a point now over the last few years where the failures on the pitch and the failures and the poor decisions that have been made in financial terms and with in recruitment, number of things, the club have been degenerating in terms of the stadium and several different areas of the club, and we're at a point now where United are at their lowest ebb in the last 12 years since Sir Alex Ferguson retired and David Gill left. We're at that point now, and this is not just. I think there's an element of history that I think people hold on to that is, well, this is Manchester United. We shouldn't have to be making the decision about whether to sell one of our brightest academy products who just came through the academy and is now a regular first team player. We shouldn't have to be making that decision because we're Manchester United and that's not what we do. The game's changed. The game has changed. And I don't doubt, for example, in it for a second at the moment, and I may be proven wrong on this, I don't know, but I'm still deciding to stick with the faith and the conviction that I have in what the new ownership want to do with the football club. I do still think, and I believe, that they are sick of watching Manchester United be one of the also-rans in the Premier League. There's probably a bit of selfishness in this for Ratcliffe, but I'm sure that he wants to be known as the person who took Manchester United back to the top. There's some decisions which they're making at the moment which fly in the face of that. But at the same time, I think United are in such a difficult position now that they have to take some short-term decisions in order to create the leverage in order to get themselves out of the hole that they're in. And unfortunately, that might mean selling Alejandro Garnacho. Short-term concessions and difficult decisions have to be made to create that and create the space to reinvest. And we've already talked about Patrick Dorgu. I'm sure that as it looks, that maybe that deal happens. Depends on the price. Obviously, United don't want to be overpaying, and they need to set some stores out there. But Alvaro Carreras is another player who could potentially come back in if they need that position for a lower fee. And obviously, as well, I think this is the other point I wanted to make on Garnacho. I think United's quoted price for him that they wanted at the start of this was 70 million euros. It looks like now there's certain reports that have come out that suggest that a point at 60 million euros, if it's from Napoli, if they reach that figure, then a deal could be done. And some people will think that's undervalued given how much United have paid for players to bring them in the past, even in Rasmus Højlund's case. But that is just the position that United are in. They can't really, they have to be bullish on a price, but at the same time, I think they are very conscious that they need to raise money in order to create that wiggle room, in order to build themselves out of the position that they're in. And then at some point when the ceiling of the club has been lifted and the floor has been lifted and they're performing better, then maybe they can reinstate those policies of this is not what we do, but I think we're just at a point with United at the moment that things have got so bad that some hard decisions have to be made. And I know that not everybody believes in what's happening at the moment. It's very difficult to do so. I know that, but at the same time, I still have confidence in the intention of the people who've taken over the club. Still have confidence in it. Anyway, for what it's worth, I think the Garnacho deal will happen as well. Just the feeling I've got. And yeah, I'd be surprised. I would be surprised, but I think the way that it looks at the moment, it seems like, and obviously I've been recording this podcast now. I haven't seen if there's any updates since, but it looks as though that one could eventually get over the line. And I'm sure that there's people who want to see a direct replacement for him, and we will see what happens there over the next few days. But hey, look, you asked me this as well. I'll finish shortly. In an ideal world, I would not want to sell Alejandro Garnacho. I would not want this situation to come about. I would not want this to happen. It's the last thing that I would do. But United are in a position where they've been trying to sell Casemiro in the entirety of last summer, the entirety of this month, and they cannot do it because they gave him one of the biggest contracts in the Premier League at £350,000 a week. Might have gone down since the failure to qualify for the Champions League has come about. But he's still one of the highest earners in the Premier League. He was signed for a 60 million-ish fee 2.5 years ago. Now, they have a player that they can't use in the system that they're playing, and it's costing them money. Those decisions were made by a different group of people. And now there's a new group of people coming in who are having to reverse all the problems that have come about. And there are a hell of a lot of problems. There are a hell of a lot of problems. Let's hope that United can end up at least going close to confirming their position in the next round of the Europa League by beating Rangers on Thursday. Let's see if they can. Look, let me know. I know that I'm saying some stuff there that maybe not everybody agrees with, but I just look at this and I think some unpopular decisions have to be made in order for this to become a successful operation again. There can't be any room for sentiment, really, or maybe some room, but the sentiment that United have kept over the last few years has ultimately contributed to driving them into this position. So they need to take on some difficult decisions and decide on the players who they feel are absolutely imperative and crucial to going forward under Ruben Amorim. And if there's players that they get a good offer for, United have to become better sellers. They have to be. Have to. And look, if they get a good deal for Garnacho and can reinvest it, then I said this a few weeks ago. If you get a decent fee for Garnacho, maybe that's two players you can sign who can fit in the system, that are young and positive and can grow as well. Maybe you can do that and you can go further to getting a team of players capable of playing effectively in the system that Amorim wants to play. But anyway, let me know about what you think about anything that I've said there. Let me know, would you sell Garnacho? What the price is for you? What it would be? Is Ruben Amorim right to lose his temper and break a TV? Let me know that as well. And look, I'll be back after the Rangers game on most likely Friday to talk about what happens in that. Also do a TPL QA as well. So please get your questions in for me if there's anything that you'd like to ask. But I've been Scott from the Promised Land Podcast. Please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc., etc. And follow me on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, TikTok, Instagram, and I'm on Blue Sky as well. Link is in the description. Until next time, everyone, let's fingers crossed United can get back to winning ways. But I'll see you soon for another episode of the Promised Land Podcast.